In February of 1974, the publishers of Doubleday released the novel Jaws, written by Peter Benchley, who wrote it within a rough 3-year period. Just before the book was publicised, film producers David Brown and Richard D. Zanuck got an opportunity to read it early. They enjoyed the book so much that they bought the film rights. Principal photography began on the film within only a matter of months, with director Spielberg homing the wheel only being his second feature film. His first directed movie was the TV film Duel back in 1971.
I'm young and I'm stupid and I'm saying Duel has 4 letters and Jaws has 4 letters, and they're both about these leviathans preying upon every man. And I said to myself, this is kind of the sequel to Duel, only it's on the water.
So in today's programme, we're going to be taking a behind the scenes look at Jaws, as well as many deleted and long lost scenes. Now with the context formally out of the way, let's find out as to why Jaws made us so terrified to head back into the water. If documentaries about missing movie deleted scenes sound like your cup of tea, then don't forget to subscribe, as you can join me along the journey of covering many more topics just like this one. And a huge shout out to all my generous Patreons, who they got to see this video nearly a whole month in advance. Link in the description if you want to make a contribution. The storyline was dramatically simplified down for the feature. The love story between Miss Brody and Hooper, and the subplot of the Mafia were all removed out. The way that the shark dies in the original story was by a harpoon. Spielberg felt that this wasn't exciting enough for a finale, thus he pitched the idea where an air tank is stuck within the shark's mouth, and Brody on the sinking ship, with one last effort, is just able to shoot at the tank, leading to one hell of a bloody explosion for the shark.
I said, Stephen, that is completely unbelievable. He said, if I have got them for 2 hours, they will believe whatever I do for the next 3 minutes. He was right, I was wrong in this entire argument. His ending brought people to their feet screaming, yes, 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 this is the way it should be.
Several writers were involved of polishing up the script. This included the original author, Peter Benchley, and 2 others who weren't credited, Howard Sackler, and even Spielberg wrote his own rendition of the script,
which I haven't shown to very many people, and I don't even think I have it anymore.
A scripted moment in Spielberg's version that never made it into the final draft is where the harbour master is watching a film on the television, specifically scripted to be the 1957 movie Don't Go Near the Water. He goes out on the harbour bay to clean out his coffee pot by dunking it in the ocean water, while still being maintained and occupied of watching the television. A boat's mast begins to move, along with another mast of a boat besides that one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Gradually a whole row of boats' masts begins to move like a domino effect, indicating that there's something travelling beneath the boat. And sure enough, moments later, the harbour master is attacked by the shark. The scene would have been immensely complicated to shoot, so in its place they wrote the scene with the 2 fishermen on the pier. While a lot of work on the script still needed to be done, a time crunch was on the way. Universal wanted to move the filming date forward by May of 1974, and then hopefully conclude filming by June, which was when the Screen Actors Guild contract was going to expire, so Universal could avoid any actors going out on strike during mid-filming. But this would mean that Spielberg would have to start principal photography without a completed script, so he asked his improvised friend Carl Gutley if he could aid into co-writing the script, where he would help create lines of dialogue on the day of filming. Gutley was initially hired on as an actor, cast as Harry Meadows, editor of the local newspaper. From there, he could always be present on the set, from day to day, refining and tweaking the dialogue. Some of the most famous lines of dialogue from the film were actually improvised, including the most misquoted sentence in the movie.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
The line, we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Gutley additionally wrote The Jaws Log, a book about the behind the scenes to coincide with the release of the movie. He wrote it within a short time frame, between March and May of 1975, only completing it within a month of the movie's release. Peter Benchley, who wrote the original Jaws book, additionally contributed into acting in the film by playing the newscaster. Already professionally interviewing people for television as a career, it wasn't too unfamiliar territory for himself. Spielberg had a fun idea to get the old couple from the Xelon Express to make a minor cameo in the film, but with the script developing many difficult scenes to shoot, Spielberg didn't want to do anything more complicated, so abandoned the idea for the niche in-joke. They filmed the movie on the island of Martha's Vineyard. The reason why the island was chosen was because it was the only place along the east coast where you could travel out 12 miles to the sea and still be within shallow waters of 30 feet. This was ideal for easier control on the shark animatronic. Additionally, you couldn't see land for miles around, which would aid into making it look like that the characters were much more secluded in the third act, when they're out hunting for the shark. Jaws was going to be the first Hollywood feature to be primarily filmed on the ocean. It had been a considerable amount of years since any major studio did a water film. The traditional way of filming a movie set above the water was by having the camera on a massive gimbal, just about hovering above the water. Director of photography Bill Butler suggested to Spielberg to film Jaws mostly handheld, as a way to more easily get to the surface level of the water. He also reinvented the water box, where it was typically used to film underwater shots, but Bill tweaked it where you could actually focus the lens within the box. Spielberg loved this approach, as it would be a familiar point of view for the audience when they personally went swimming in the ocean. The shark animatronic that was devised for the film hardly worked. The ocean environment really took a toll on the shark's internal engineering. In fact, it immensely delayed the movie by a matter of months, as the crew were constantly waiting for the shark to be fully functional once again. The most enduring and repetitive phrase that the cast had to listen to was "the shark is not working." The shooting was becoming so immensely frustrating that where they could, the crew purposely filmed around the shark, just so they could actually make some progress. This would aid in the movie's favour, as critics would have praised the film for only sparingly seeing the shark, mostly leaving it up to the audience's imagination, for the shark lurking made it for a very suspenseful movie experience. The film relied on other simpler elements to make the viewers believe that the shark was actually there, such as John Williams' score for the build-up of the shark attack.
And without that score, to this day I believe the film would have only been half as successful. I think the score was clearly responsible for half the success of that movie.
Practically all usable footage of the shark was implemented for the final film. One of the most memorable shock moments of the movie is where Hooper dives down to some wreckage and stumbles upon a decomposing body. The shot of the head was a late edition reshoot. Since the studio didn't felt the shot was necessary, Spielberg had to personally cover the expenses. He did several different takes with the double of Hooper to see which one would be more effective. He would ultimately use the take where it offered a few seconds of pause before the head would come out of the wreckage. Australian couple Ron and Valerie Taylor were approached if they could photograph real-life sharks that could be featured in the movie. The fictional Jaws shark was about 26 feet long, and the real-life sharks that the Taylors were going to be filming were only 14 feet long. So as a way to make the Australian footage of the sharks seem much more bigger, was to make a miniature cage and get a shorter than average height person inside. Universal hired on Carl Rizzo to be the man inside the miniature cage. He had been an experienced horseback rider for movies but had no experience for scuba diving. Rizzo was ecstatic to get the job, but eventually found it a terrible ordeal, spending up to a week being lowered in shark-infested waters, which completely oversized him. The shots were going to be inserted for Matt Hooper's death. They still needed a shot of the shark attacking the cage. There was an incident where a shark accidentally got its nose stuck in the cage, becoming tangled and majorly destroying the prop. Rizzo was in the cage some moments ago, but panicked and insisted to get back inside the boat. So while he wasn't in the cage for what would have been the needed shot, it was actually a good thing, as Rizzo would have surely drowned in the incident. When the rushes came back to Universal, the shot was so spectacular that the script was rewritten for Hooper to survive, that he was able to escape the cage and hide on the surface floor, and then finally resurface when the shark is killed off. When the final edit of the movie was being prepared, Spielberg was advised to make some very minor edits for the final cut, so they could just avoid an R rating. This included just trimming several frames of the severed leg hitting the ocean floor, but all the death scenes were mostly left intact. Since it was a shark doing the killings, they were able to get away with a PG rating, since what happens in nature is part of childhood experience.
From the best-selling novel, Jaws, rated PG, may be too intense for younger children.
When the movie was released in the summer of 1975, it made box office history by becoming the first domestic movie to make over $100 million, and grossing just shy of $500 million worldwide. Side note, while Jaws may have been revolutionary for the film industry, it invented the summer blockbuster, it made Spielberg a household name, it's important to remember its detrimental effect on the shark species. Sharks generally have a greater character than what the Jaws movies portrayed as the bloodthirsty monsters. Shark attacks happen so rarely, in fact, it's a bit misleading to call them shark attacks. They're more like shark accidents. Actually, they're more scared of humans than we are of them. You are more likely to be killed by your household pet than you are a great white. There's still so much we don't fully understand about sharks. The marketing team behind the movie Jaws spent over $1 million on advertisements of the public's understanding of the sharks, making them terrified of the species as a way to prompt them to see the movie. The stigma of sharks being dangerous animals was around for decades before the movie and the novel of Jaws. But those products only helped to reinforce the stigma and made shark hunting mainstream. For years, sharks were not a protective group of animals. Today, shark populations have gone down by 90%. And now the great white, the one that Jaws is particularly based on, a fully grown adult is now extremely rare to see in the ocean. Us as the human race have certainly a lot to answer for many of the now critically endangered species of sharks. Now, let me back up. I'm not trying to make people purposely ashamed for liking the movie, or trying to convince you to hate the film. I'm quite fond of the movie and its sequels myself. But this is just a friendly reminder that Jaws and its sequels are just a work of fiction. If there's anybody out there who wants to contribute or aid in the efforts of protecting sharks, I've put some links down below of some of the best organisations to get involved with. Four years after the original cinematic release of Jaws, the film would still go forward with continuous momentum, with outstanding numbers. When it made its first TV debut on ABC in 1979, it was estimated to have been viewed within 29 million households, making it one of the most sizable movie premieres on television, only just being behind the record of Gone with the Wind, with approximately 33 million households tuning in. With the horror and graphic scenes of Jaws now being shown on a platform with a broader audience, television censorship removed these scenes out. The bloody leg who had just made it in the theatrical cut was not so lucky this time round. In the following years, while the television version of Jaws may have removed some scenes, viewers who were familiar with the film noticed some exclusive scenes that were not seen in either the theatrical cut of Jaws or the home media releases. About 10 minutes of cut material was contributed back into the film. This was steadily becoming a common practice with films that were debuting on television around about this time. Since networks were re-editing the film, not only they could make the runtime a more rounded number, so they could more easily snugly fit them within a time slot, but also a longer runtime could contribute more ad time, and if they were able to extend the runtime long enough, they could chop the films into two parts. Typically for double night feature nights, where if viewers wanted to see the conclusion to the film, they would have to tune back in to the following evening. Taking Jaws for an example, the majority of these deleted scenes were by and large extended takes.
Nobody saw her go into the water? Somebody could have.
This scene between Brody and Jonathan Fillet was actually trimmed abruptly during mid-scene. These two shots are not separate but are part of the same continuous take.
You an Islander? No, we're sick. You here for the summer? Yeah, me and some friends got a house. Come on.
For Jaws' 20th anniversary, the Laserdisc release included the TV deleted scenes, including a selection of previously unseen sequences, such as when Brody and the teenage lad faces the remains of Chrissy Watkins, the girl that was killed off at the beginning of the movie. Brody asked the lad, who knew the girl, that if he can identify that it is indeed Chrissy. The young man is naturally reluctant to see the remains. The extended TV cut had a scene of the mayor stopping Deputy Leonard from putting up the signs of no swimming.
We had a shark attack at South Beach this morning, Mayor. Daniel, I got a batten down the beach. What do you call this, Lenny? We'll take my car, okay? You come with us. Yeah, but I gotta do these signs. Come on, and give us time to think about what the signs are gonna say.
Another home media exclusive deleted scene is an extended scene where the mayor Larry Vaughn is trying to convince Brody to not jump to the conclusion that the girl died of a shark attack, in fear that such news will scare away the upcoming summer tourists. In the deleted footage, the scene was originally meant to end with the mayor telling Brody about other ongoing issues on the island to keep his mind occupied off the shark situation, but Brody eventually just stops listening.
Martin, kids are breaking my old fence. Is this your... Martin?
The deleted scene of Quint's introduction was another sequence that first made its way to the TV airings. While waiting to get his appropriate fishing gear, he listens in to a lad rehearsing his clarinet. Interestingly, when Spielberg scripted his own version of Jaws, the first time we would have seen Quint was at a local movie theatre, watching the 1956 adaptation of Moby Dick, specifically the finale where Captain Ahab is stabbing the whale. Quint finding the production value of the film absolutely hilarious, where everybody else in the auditorium stand up and leave, with Quint the only one left in the cinema still laughing hysterically. The reason why this scene wasn't incorporated for the final draft was that they couldn't secure permission from the star of the film, Gregory Peck, who owned partial copyright over the movie.
Greg wasn't opposed to the use of that scene that way in Jaws. He just claimed that he wasn't really proud of Moby Dick. It was not the proudest moment in his body of work, and just didn't really want us to either make fun of it or just include it at all in the movie, so we could never get the rights to use Moby Dick.
More cut footage that found its way to the TV broadcast is a trim scene where Brody is trying to de-escalate the chaos going on board the port, intercut with some B-roll full on antics, taking place right before we see Hooper.
You aren't going out with that bunch of crazy nuts, are you?
I don't know yet.
Say, I hope you're not going out with those nuts, are you?
Just get out of here first. You have to move out or he can't get out at all.
The TV cut showed an extended scene of the fishermen going out to hunt the shark, which later on we see that they were successful into catching their prize, but not the right shark.
It's a tiger shark. A what?
A frame of the scene was used for a jigsaw puzzle at the time, although touched up to look a little bit more spectacular than it actually was. A deleted scene that was only shown exclusively in the making of featurette on the Laserdisc release was an improvised line of dialogue at the dinner table, where Miss Brody talks about a Cousteau show that she watched.
Sea otters, where the mother was killed in front of the baby. The baby saw it with his eyes. You could see the tears coming down his face. It was the most incredible thing I have ever seen. It was terrible. Mikey wanted us to adopt the sea otter. I've never been as moved by anything on television. It was special.
This cut scene that was first shown on the 20th anniversary release shows Quint's mate, Salvatore, unprovoked to get out on the ocean to kill the shark.
You miserable little son of a bitch.
The final TV deleted scene are some rather brief shots of Quint's fishing box. Unlike the other exclusive TV deleted scenes, these cut shots were never featured in any home media release of the film.
Well, you lose one, you rig one.
Over the years, fans of the movie had noticed promotional material of scenes and setups that were never shown in any rendition of the movie.
You know, I had seen all those pictures of Brody's son in the arms of the stuntman, and I always wondered, like, that's not in the movie, and yet that picture was used to promote the picture.
More unseen footage was placed on the Laserdisc featurette, where they discuss a gruesome death scene with the shark dragging along the swimmer, played by Ted Grossman, where in the moment it looks like the shark is heading straight towards Brody's older son, Michael Brody, but still being dragged along, Ted is just able to push the boy out of the shark's path before Ted is dragged under the ocean. The filmmakers deemed this death scene to be far too bold in comparison to the previous death scenes this early in the film.
Too bloody, and I thought it was in bad taste, so I cut it out.
Director and producer Luance made the making of documentary, where he tracked down a number of unused takes.
I think that if there had not been DVDs today, you know, I think a lot of that stuff would be totally lost.
But there is still one unsavory death scene that has not reappeared anywhere. Near to the end of the location filming of Jaws, due to ongoing stress and eventual nervous breakdown, Spielberg prematurely left the shoot. Thankfully, there was not incredibly much left to film the production, only the insert shots needed to be completed, such as the death scene with the boy Alex, which the scene provides our first glimmer of the shark. These scenes were supervised and directed by Joe Alves, who would later aid as a second director for Jaws 2 and be the main director for Jaws 3. Originally, we would have seen the shark's head launching out of the water, biting and dragging down Alex, with the stunt being way too dangerous for child actor Jeffrey to be involved with. His part was supplemented by a female mannequin. Although either of it was because that it revealed the shark far too early in the story, or it was one of the many graphic shots that contributed to the R-rated version, the shot went unused for the final cut. behind the scenes photographs and home movie footage of the setup has been the only glimmer the public has had of the discarded shot. It's not known as to why it was never featured on any home media releases. It remains to be the holy grail of missing media for Jaws fans. Nearly approaching 30 years since all the deleted scenes were made available, and subsequent releases have not featured any new material, the odds don't look particularly optimistic if we'll ever get to see any more footage. But as the old saying goes for lost media, never say never.